So I've always been equal parts fascinated and frustrated by the idea that around two different sets of people, I could behave in a completely different way. I could almost have two separate personalities. And this was a real problem for me growing up, that around one group of people, I could be relaxed, confident, able to speak and express myself with zero trouble. And around another group of people, anxious, more introverted than usual, tense inside my body, stuttering, messing up my words and being afraid to make a mistake. So we're going to talk about why this is. Why we seem to have different personalities around different people. And I think the answer is something that will be quite enlightening to a lot of people. And I'm also going to touch briefly on what I've done to maybe help myself through this problem. So the best example I can give you of this is something which occurred to me during high school. Now, I met this guy when I was 12, who became one of my closest friends for like a few years in high school. And what was unique about this guy is he was from a different class. And he didn't really know me or who I was. Maybe this is going to get into like cringy high school dynamics type of territory, but he didn't know like how I was viewed in my class. I was a pretty unpopular kid, very, very introverted, didn't speak to anyone. But he didn't see any of that. He didn't judge me based on the perceptions of people in my class. This was a very organic friendship, and we became friends on this school trip. And just by coincidence, he ended up moving like very close to me. And I would go around his house on the weekend and we would hang out, and it was so refreshing because I could just laugh, and I felt so relaxed and comfortable around this guy. We stayed friends for like many, many years. And it was just so different to my everyday experience in school because I wouldn't see this guy. We wouldn't hang out on lunchtime. He was like almost exclusively a friend outside of school. But in class, it was just brutal. Getting picked on, getting bullied. I was new to my school, so we moved from like the area where I grew up. I didn't join the class late, but everyone pretty much knew each other from their school before, and because I was new to the area, I didn't know anyone, and I really struggled like finding my people. And I got ridiculed, mocked, to the point where I kind of just went in on myself. I became like deeply introverted as a defense mechanism to protect me from that. I kind of thought that no one can kind of do me harm if I don't give them anything. If I don't talk, I don't give them any ammunition. And that ended up backfiring on me because I developed this reputation for being the really quiet kid. And people would use that as their ammunition. They would call me the new kid. They would just yell at me from across the class, like, why don't you ever say anything? So it was a pretty shitty time for like the first few years in school, not having like proper friends. But I was really relying on people like this kid as kind of almost as like a way of staying sane. Things did improve for me later on, but not before. This story unfortunately came to like a bit of an unhappy ending, which was someone in my class who I didn't really get on very well with. He got the bus with this guy, and I knew they spent time together, and that always kind of made me afraid because I'm worried about other people kind of coming in and poisoning what I have with this guy. Like, this is a friend I made organically. And someone told me one morning, who got on the bus with them, they say, this guy, the guy I didn't like, he had a lot to say about you this morning. He was talking about you, saying just saying like a load of nasty things, but specifically commenting on the fact that I never say anything, that, you know, something along the lines of me being socially awkward because I was so quiet. In reality, I just didn't want anything to do with like any of these people. And from there, kind of things changed with this other guy, my friend. Something just felt a little bit different. It just felt like a little bit of static between us when we would hang out. I think I noticed that, you know, he felt a little bit more withdrawn. And in turn, I started to feel like a low level of anxiety when I would hang out around him. And my mind was always going to, what's he been told about me? What does he know? Has something changed? And the friendship kind of just ended up fizzling out after that, which is kind of sad. But the really interesting thing about this is I've never really known to this day whether anything did change, or whether it was something to do with him or more to do with me. Which of us really kind of withdrew? Was it him because someone else had kind of got to him, I guess, told him things about me, spread lies about me? Or was it just the perception in my mind that something had taken place? Because I know that since then, hanging around with him, I was on guard, I was worried. I was almost expecting something to go wrong. And now as I kind of consider it, even as I'm talking to you about this now, I kind of believe that maybe in some ways that perception, which may only have been a belief in my mind, kind of poisoned the relationship, caused me to act in a different way, more kind of anxious, needy, withdrawn, almost taking on a different personality to what he knew of me. Suppose I'll never really know, but that story is kind of the gateway to what I want to talk about. Now, this is something I learned from my mentor, talking about the topic of awkwardness and social anxiety. So we often give ourselves a very hard time if we act in ways that are kind of incongruent with like our ideal self. Around certain people, I'm confident. Around others, I'm an awkward mess. But what I've learned since then is this is not two separate personalities. This is not the confident you versus the awkward you. It's simply a question of how safe you feel around a certain someone or in a specific situation. That is the thing that determines what personality comes out. Whether you are confident and relaxed, able to express yourself, or this kind of awkward, nervous, stuttery version of yourself that we give ourselves a hard time over. It's purely down to how safe you feel, how safe your nervous system in particular feels in a specific situation. So I want you to think about the times when you most feel safe in a social context. Because I want to prove this idea to you. For me, when I most feel safe, or the absence of like anxious feelings, when I feel like I can be myself and don't have any trouble doing that, it's probably around my most trusted friends and family, people who I feel completely at ease with. When you're around people like this, have you ever once worried about what you're going to say next? Or have you ever maybe you messed up, but did it ever register in your mind that this was something you should be ashamed of yourself for or worried about? Like, oh fuck, I just messed up my words a little bit. What are they thinking of me? You never had those thoughts because you feel safe and you trust these people. And in turn, you feel confident expressing yourself. When you're with your friends, or I know I am, like some people see me as quite an introverted person, but when I'm with my friends, I'm loud. I'm laughing, I'm happy. And I kind of don't really care who knows it. But if you contrast that with people who you're not totally at ease with strangers, or even people who like, maybe you consider them enemies or you don't really like them, you don't feel like that. You second guess yourself. You question each word before it comes out of your mouth. You don't feel totally comfortable expressing yourself or saying what's on your mind. You might bite your tongue. That's because you don't feel safe around these people. And when you don't feel safe, what's the reason for that? What is safety the opposite of? It's danger. The reason you retreat and go in on yourself and kind of become this less confident version of you, that's not a new personality type. I think we can establish that the real personality, the true version of you, is the one who you are around your best friends. That's you. This is something different. This is the you who is feeling some kind of danger, who feels some kind of like threat in the environment. Now, this is what I had in school every single day, which is like really sad to say. Becoming like really, really quiet and introverted, which is not like who I am at my core, in response to some kind of danger. Changing who I am because I believe it makes me less of a target. And that is a pattern of behavior that evolved from being in real danger. Not physical danger, but emotional danger, which your body and your nervous system holds onto just as much as like a real threat. Because when you're subjected to like embarrassment and humiliation constantly, when people bully you and insult you, you remember that and you develop these patterns, these ways of protecting yourself. Like my way was to retreat into myself, to become very, very shy and reserved. Other people might lash out, they might like become really aggressive, they might start fighting. But it's only to keep you safe. It's only to keep you safe from that perceived danger. But this is not your real personality. This is just in response to that danger. It's you being in fight or flight mode. When you're in fight or flight, you're not supposed to be able to think of what to say next. You're not supposed to be funny or charismatic or able to express yourself that well. You're only focused on getting out of the danger. That's the priority. So it's not just like an emotional thing, it's also like a chemical thing in your body, a biological thing. You're not supposed to be able to like think really sharply when you're in danger. The only priority is getting out of that situation. But here's where it gets really interesting, and I want to tie it back to this story about me and my friend. It's sometimes when we've been subjected to that emotional pain, and we spent so long in fight or flight in response to that danger, in the second personality, which isn't really a personality, we can end up going into it much, much easier. Going into this fight or flight mode to the point where we're reacting and trying to protect ourselves to danger that isn't really there, to threats that don't really exist. But if you've had like the slightest little reminder, the slightest thing that triggers a memory of that experience, it's just enough to put you straight back in the second personality, to make you go in your shell. For instance, I consider myself like pretty confident and able to communicate with people I don't know. Like, maybe that's a weird way of putting it. I'm good with people now. Wasn't always like that, but I've gotten myself to that point. But around certain personality types, I'm straight back to how I used to be, retreating into my introverted self. And you know what type of people it is? It's people who are very dominant, very loud, very extroverted, who take up a lot of social space. When they're in the room, you know it. Maybe they're quite popular, maybe they're quite admired. Around these people, usually I don't even know them. I don't know what type of person they're like. But just being in their presence makes me go back into my shell. And my theory on that is, I think they remind me of people in the past who inflicted this harm on me. My bullies, who were also usually quite popular, quite confident, but able to kind of weaponize those things against you to get other people to join in and mock me. So I think even in like my adulthood, I'm 24 now, and we're going back 10 years, before 10 years, like a decade ago, that these things were happening to me. They've not left me. Around those people, I go into my shell as like a way of protecting myself, and I second guess myself, and I become a people-pleasing version of myself because I want to win them over so that they can't hurt me anymore. Isn't that crazy? Like, let me know if there's something comparable to you. Like, maybe this is bringing some stuff up for you as well. But going back to what happened with my friend, I now believe that I was reacting to some kind of imaginary danger, but in the same way. That I let kind of it's not really any fault of my own because I was going through that bullying. But I was almost embracing myself for the danger when I hung out with him, expecting something to go wrong. Reacting in the same way I would to a bully because I believed that maybe he would start treating me that way as well, even though I didn't have any real evidence of that. And through doing that, through becoming all tense and maybe like a little bit unsure and needy, I might have poisoned the friendship. When really I made like good friends towards the end of school, but this guy was maybe the first friend I had in high school, who we became friends, like I said, in the most organic way because we just enjoyed each other's company. We just liked each other. You have like a spark with people, and me and him had that. And I think it went because of myself responding to this danger of going into the second personality. If any of this sounds relatable to you, I'd really like to hear about it. I love reading your comments. But in terms of what we can do to kind of, I'm reluctant to use the word like fix it because I don't know if there is a fix, not in a depressing way. The only thing we can really do is what I've been doing so far in this video, which is bringing our attention to whatever these patterns are, having an understanding of your patterns. If someone or something is causing a particular anxiety response in you, but it's not something that's like an immediate danger to your safety, a lot of the times it's not you reacting to like that situation, it's you reacting and being kind of sensitive to something which happened to you in the past. I've had like more obvious examples of this where I've been friends with people who the relationship is also based on like kind of banter and bullying, like maybe you're mocking each other and part of you is all right with that. But for me, there was always a part of this where I didn't like it. I didn't like being made to feel that way. So when I am around these people, I can never fully relax. I can never fully be myself. That's quite a common trigger, I guess, and one that's like not so layered. But yeah, oftentimes in these situations, we're reacting to the past. So have a think about what that could be for you. I'm also offering completely free one-to-one coaching at the moment. And I'm very happy to talk through your experiences, any kind of social problem or problem relating to this. If you can think of any of your patterns or would like help identifying them, I'd be more than happy to do that. Again, completely free. Just book a call through the link in my bio. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.